Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to have you. I know it is a very busy time in schools as you begin to wrap up the school year, so we are excited to have you live. If you have decided to leverage this webinar as an asynchronous resource, we are glad you're here too. You are at the Early Childhood Through the Lens of UDL webinar from the CECIL Project, California Coalition for Inclusive Learning. Hopefully you are eager to learn more on this topic as we will be sharing best practices. Without further ado, I will pass the baton to our colleague, Daniel Mendoza.
Hello, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're at in the country. Thank you so much for joining me here, and a big thank you to everybody at CAST for having me. I'm super excited to share some of the work that we've been doing, early childhood education through the lens of UDL. So for those of you that are in early childhood education and are familiar with UDL, you're going to see a lot of similarities, right? And we're going to discuss some things. One of the things I love to say is that UDL is early childhood education. It's what we've come to do. It's what we've come to know as educators and how we can facilitate that. So as we move forward, there'll be some things that we'll do, but let's go ahead and get started. So some of the leadership we have here in California is our California Coalition for Inclusive Literacy, inclusive, what did we change to? Inclusive leadership, that's right. Here with our...
Learning.
It's learning. Oh, we changed it to learning? Oh, man. Thank you. Gracias. So they've kind of changed, right? It was literacy at first. Now it's learning. Wouldn't make no sense to be doubled up with leadership here. But these are our partners. So we work with CDE. We work for the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, and then Placer County Office of Education, that's where I come from, as well as CAST. So I've been fortunate enough to be working with CAST and UDL for the last 5 years, I believe. So quite some time now that we've kind of brought this out and kind of been working through this. So we also want to acknowledge some of our county partners here in California. We've been working a lot with our partners to leverage all this work and create, a tool and access point for everybody. Those partners include the Fresno County Office of Education, Los Angeles County Office of Education, San Jose, Santa Clara, Sonoma, the Valley to Coast Collaborative, right? And then the Capital Central Foothill Area Consortium. So these are some of the groups that we work with in order to ensure that we're really, providing the best possible means of engagement that we can for our group. So super excited to be doing this with everybody and look forward to sharing more here. So let's continue. So my name is Daniel Mendoza. I am a program manager for early childhood education and educational services here at the Placer County Office of Education. I myself was a preschool teacher for around 12 years. So I was in the classroom, and being a male, if you're not familiar with early childhood education, we make up a very small percentage of teachers out there in the field. So myself, we're about 3%, and then I'm bilingual, which knocks me down a little bit more. So I am about 2% of all preschool teachers in the country, right? So for me, being a part of the preschool classroom was really an integral part, really essential for me as an individual. And I was also a Head Start child myself. So being able to come back and utilize my skill sets and my knowledge in the communities that I grew up with are really important. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this information with you. So today, what we're going to do in the chat box, anytime, feel free to introduce yourself, ask or answer a question. Please feel free to share an idea or a connection you see, and then feel free to hyperlink anything you may find. I do invite you to put those questions in the chat. Brenda and Sylvia are, I think, facilitating that for me, so you're more than happy to do that. It's also going to seem like I'm not going to stop talking, but I really am eventually. So if you have a question, a thought, or an idea, I preface with that because I really want you to put that in as I'm going through, because sometimes if we don't take the time to kind of come back, or if we take the time to come back, a lot of times we miss what we were thinking, right? Or that idea. So I definitely invite you to add your questions, comments, concerns, anything you have. If you see someone say something, you have some experience, please do so. I super appreciate it. And again, looking forward to sharing with you all. So you'll find the chat box in there. You can utilize that. Contribute, please make sure that you do all panelists and attendees when you go in there. If you do panelists, it's just going to go to the group here from CAST that's helping me. So we definitely want everybody to see that, right? Because that's one of the things I've been able to really enjoy and really see throughout my journey here in working with UDL and Cecil and CAST is just that ability that everybody has, that coming together, that taking the time to share and create this community. Because I know we're all here to do one thing, and that is to improve the education of children, to improve their access, and to encourage or to create better resources for ourselves. So definitely get in there. We all want to see it. So today what we're going to do, our session agenda is we're just going to do a little, welcome, sharing some information, which is what I've been doing, some context and connecting in there, which I shared with you already. We're going to do a little bit of a UDL definition and refresher for those of you that might be new to UDL or the framework, kind of understanding what that looks like. And then we're going to explore expert learning in early childhood education, followed by a little Q&A. So we're really going to kind of dive in and take a look at what UDL looks like in early childhood education. We're going to examine how universally designed learning environments and experiences promote the development of expert learners. And don't worry, if you're not familiar with that term, expert learner, we're going to go over that here shortly, discuss a little bit of that. And then we're going to explore practical strategies, tools, and examples to support that, right? To support the development of expert learners in early childhood education. Like I mentioned, for me, and I won't say this because I'm on a casting, but sometimes I say this out in the world, right? To me, UDL feels like it came right from the preschool classroom. For those of you working in early childhood education, as we kind of move through this, you're going to say, wait, I do that. Or wait, we kind of do this already in ECE. But right, it's reframing it, understanding the capacity and the potential that it has to be moved through, right? We're creating foundational knowledge and skills for our early learners already in the preschool classroom, right? We know that in early learning, whether it's preschool, transitional kindergarten, maybe in-home providers, things like that are utilizing universal design, we know that that's going to carry over into the upper grades. So how do we create those foundations? We're doing the same thing with social emotional skills, mathematics, language and literacy. These all fall right into UDL without any hesitation. So moving forward here. So here's a quick definition of the UDL operational definition, right? Universal Design for Learning, UDL, is an educational framework based on research in the learning sciences that guides the development of flexible methods, materials, and environments that embrace variability, minimizing barriers, and develop expert learning for all. So we're going to touch on some of those highlighted points, right? Flexible methods, materials and environment, variability, barriers, minimizing barriers. I know some of you who are in here participating, that are working in schools already, understand, right, where the barrier exists. Does the barrier exist in the students? Does the barrier exist in the environment, materials? Where is it, right? We definitely are going to dive into that. And I know I can hear lots of you already. It doesn't exist in the children. So you're already on your way to understanding how UDL works. So just real quick, we're going to do a little refresher on UDL, just to kind of go through and gain a little better understanding, right? So with UDL, what we understand is that the barrier is in the design, right? The barriers exist in the design. If children are having an issue, if children are trying to get through their work, if children are trying to understand what's in their way, it's never the children, right? Especially in early childhood education. We have to remember these children have been interacting with the world for maybe about 3 to 5 years, right? 3 to 5 years experiencing the world. Think about all the expertise and knowledge that we have as individuals as we've grown into adults, all those things. Children don't have that, right? So they don't have that understanding. Those barriers aren't in them because they just don't exist in them yet, right? It's in the environment. We also understand in UDL that variability is the norm, right? It is contextual and it can be planned for. Variability is the norm in everyday life. This is one of the things I love about UDL. And since being a part of UDL, participating in activities, presenting, diving deeper into this, I've learned that UDL is a part of my everyday life as well, especially understanding variability. And especially as educators, as I'm sure a lot of you are, that we know, right, that variability is a necessity. And in early ed, it's always about anticipating. What can we do? It can be planned for. I know this is going to happen. The goal of UDL is expert learning. So it's through expert learning that children have this ability. They're going to be able to set clear and rigorous goals. We're going to be able to anticipate variability in this UDL design process. And then we're going to design options to minimize those barriers. All those come together to create this maximized person, right? This expert learner, this child that is able to understand where they're at developmentally, is able to progress and grow, right? So let's look at a little bit of learner variability. Interest, right? Effort and resilience, emotional well-being. These are all things we can take into context as we're working with children, as we're designing our abilities, our classrooms for children, as we're creating content, interactions. How do we talk to children, right? How do we introduce different learning opportunities? How do we bring children into this understanding, right? The ability to perceive content is happening in learner variability, language, background knowledge is essential, physical navigation skills, right? Communication skills. And these things are things we're working through with children, right? It's this understanding, it's this ability to give them their context and their use, right? Executive function skills. That's one of the things, if you're studied early childhood education, you kind of move through understanding, looked at all those theories and practices, looked at how we build curriculum, how we engage children, how we help them work through their ideas to problem solve. All those things come together to help us with our executive function. And UDL is a great platform for that. So how do we do this, right? Design areas where barriers may exist. We want to look at that. Materials. How is content being represented, right? How do we understand what's happening here with children as they move through this? Methods. How is content being delivered? Methods are an important part of our understanding of UDL and pushing it through. How are we doing this? These are things we're thinking about, things we're putting together as we utilize these methods and these practices to create expert learners. How is learning being demonstrated, right? How are we showing this? How are they doing this? Through assessment, we see materials, methods, and assessments. We're seeing those key words along with environment, right? How is the climate culture supportive of the learning? All these come together. All these are things that whether you're an administrator and you're asking for, or you're a teacher and administration is asking you, or you're at a site, these are the things, right? They want to know about materials, methods, assessment, and environment. All these things fall together within UDL to help create this expert learner, to help children move along and really grow as individuals. So, areas to consider. Although this is not an exhaustive list, just to start to define what the buckets are, it's really important to hear feedback that some teachers struggle with and clarify of what is exactly meant by these things, right? So materials, what is really meant by that, right? So this is really not meant to be a rigid definition per se to follow, and definitely not a checkbox. UDL is not a checkbox that we're going to go through and make sure we're checking we did this, we did that, we did this, right? This is building a habit of mind, anticipating the barrier. The goal is not to sort, not to really look at like where the barrier falls. The goal is where are you thinking about these, right? Where are you building these habits of mind so that you can move children forward? Materials. So what is that, right? Reading, text, videos, audio, manipulatives, digital tools, online platforms. And shortly, I'm going to share some videos and some images from classrooms that are utilizing UDL and what that actually looks like, right? Methods. How do we do that? Lecture, discussion. Obviously, we're not lecturing our preschoolers, right? But discussions, reading, investigation, inquiry, online platforms. I know that can be a big buzzword for us, online kind of these interactions, right? In early ed. But we really are teaching children responsible use, and we're really teaching children that technology is a mediator for their learning, their ability to communicate. All those things happen for them. Assessments, right? What types of assessments are we doing? Written, oral, reading, visual, again, online, digital, how do we utilize these, right? Anticipating things. Are there going to be any barriers in here? Environment, our protocols, our routines, expectations, physical space. Looking across this list, really take a moment to think, where are there barriers that exist for children in here? What can I do to modify these? How can I adjust these? How can I anticipate these things, right? Where am I thinking children are going to be next? How can I move forward as I progress, right? So taking these really, again, not a checklist, right? Just an idea. Because as you start going through these, especially in early childhood education, we know, right, what's happening. We know that things are going to vary day by day. And that's exactly just what happens, right? It's exactly what goes on with children as they learn. We know that it's going to be varied. We know we have to anticipate, especially with the littles, right? We never know what's going to happen. So moving along here. So as we look here at the guidelines, the UDL guidelines, we see where these buckets, where everything kind of falls in place here, right? Engagement, reoccurring their interests, right? Sustaining effort and persistence, self-regulation. When we look at representation, right? Multiple means of representation. We want children to understand perception, language and symbols, comprehension. Now, this definitely looks different across all the grades. Brenda was sharing with me earlier, right? She works in more secondary. These are going to look a little different in that group, right? They're going to look a little different in preschool, but we're going to share that information. I have a wonderful tool for you as well that'll help you kind of understand that. Providing multiple means of action and expression, right? That falls in physical action, expression and communication, and again, that executive function that we find. See here. So as you think about the ways that early childhood education can be leveraged to support engagement, representation, and action and expression, as we move forward, just really kind of take some time to see what resonates with you, right? Whether you're going to reflect on your own, share this out in the chat, just keep notes for yourself, or if you'd like to share again in the chat, whatever you're feeling. But what really resonates with you, right? Or what are you wrestling with? Do I really feel like UDL fits into early childhood education? Is it just another thing? I hear that a lot, right? Is it just another thing? I hear that a lot at the beginning of presentations when I talk about UDL. I never hear it at the end, especially in early childhood education, once you start to make those connections and see, right? And what might work in your context, that's exactly what I'm saying, right? What works in your context? Again, as I shared, this isn't a checklist, right? This isn't, am I doing this? Am I doing this? I promise you, you're doing a lot of this already, especially if you're working with preschool age children, TK children, or kindergarten children. A lot of this multiple means of all these things you're doing, I promise you. So I'm not going to give you 1 minute here because I'm going to keep going because I have a couple videos and I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to kind of talk and stuff. But again, your options for sharing are there. Please feel free to do so. And thank you so much. It's going to start the timer anyways. Okay. So expert learner. When we speak of expert learners, we want to support the development of students who, again, are purposeful and motivated, resourceful and knowledgeable, and strategic and goal-oriented, right? We want these children to meet these capacities. But what does that really look like, right? You're saying, okay, well, that's great. We can do that for children. We might already do that already for children. But what does that really look like? So moving forward here. So in early childhood education, we really have been able to utilize this framework or these guidelines of UDL in order to kind of show what that looks like. So you may have seen this if you're familiar with UDL, but you've seen it for the older grades, right? So take a moment to look at it and think about what this might look like in a classroom and how might you design for it, right? What might the habits and practice look like for your youngest learners? So in this one, what I really love is looking at engagement, right? Purposeful and motivated learners. These are things that we're looking for, right? A child that is excited to explore new skills because it grows their brain, right? They understand that, right? They understand, oh, when I learn new stuff, I have knowledge. I've had children tell me that. Oh, I just learned that I'm so smart, right? You've heard children say that. Oh, I know that I'm so smart, right? Children that use classroom expectations to help them focus in their learning. Children might not actually say these things, right? But they may be demonstrating them. So as an educator, especially in early childhood education, we know that we're gathering information and resources for children, so we're recognizing this. Purposeful and motivated learners challenge themselves, right, to learn new things. In early ed, we always have that, right? That give and take, that trial and error, it's happening all around us. It's a great experience. It's why I love early ed, right? And these purposeful and motivated learners know how to take care of their feelings and help them focus. In early childhood education, social emotional development is so much on the forefront of what we're doing to allow children to really step into this idea of becoming learners, of becoming educated, and becoming, who they really are as individuals. Representation, right? We look at this in all kinds of facets, right? We look at representation as resourceful and knowledgeable learners that can connect what they're learning to what they have learned before. They can remember what they already know and build on something new, right? So think about those things that we do. For example, for me, I read books to my preschoolers, right? And before I read a book, I say, oh, I'm gonna read this book. We're gonna have lots of fun. There's great characters. Some of you friends have read this before, and I know you love it. But I'm going to ask you questions afterwards, right? Anticipating those barriers. I'm going to ask you some questions. So if you're paying attention, start thinking about this book because I'm coming back to you, right? So things like that start to happen, right? Building on what they already know. I do that a lot. Some children say, Teacher Daniel's going to read us a book. He's going to ask us questions afterwards. They already know, right? They know what to expect because I've created that line of communication with them. Resourceful and knowledgeable learners can find the tools and materials to remember new ideas, and they know how to take what they have already learned and use it later inside and outside those classrooms. For example, art. Art's a huge part of my everyday and early childhood education and personally. And I know that art becomes a language for children. All those tools, all those little things they have, the different types of paintings, the different types of collages, all become mediators for children. It all becomes a way for them to express themselves, to share their ideas and who they are as individuals. They know that, right? In representation, that expert learner is aware. And action and expression, strategic and goal-directed learners. Now, I know that might sound a little crazy for the preschoolers, especially in the first part of the year, right? We know how first experience, lots of emotions, whether it's from grown-ups, whether it's from the children, there's a lot going on. But how do we get there, right? How do we anticipate those barriers so that children who are strategic and goal-oriented can make their own plan for learning something new? They know how all their learning tools and materials can help them. Again, right, those tools and materials become mediators for them. They can find what works and what doesn't work, right? You've had those conversations with your children, right? Learning what they're good at and what they may need help with, right? When one way of learning isn't working, how can I try something new? It's those conversations, it's those taking times to get to know our students, to understand who they are as individuals. Such an important facet. So this is really the habits and practices of expert learners in early childhood education. If you've seen this guideline for the older children, you'll see some similarities, but we've just kind of changed the dialogue a little bit and made it more ECE so that we'll have that understanding. I am fortunate enough to do this presentation with the super awesome Becky Canham and Kim Gerald and really building up this wealth of knowledge and information for us to share out with you has been such a great resource. And another thing we did was we created some videos. So with the help of Shamron Coyle, like she may be on here, but you'll see her information later. She's our director of CCIL here in Placer County. We put together some videos for you all. So what does this actually look like, right? Because I'm talking, I'm sharing some information, I'm sharing anecdotals, I'm giving you some definitions and some things like that. But what does it look like in the classroom? So in this video, I want you to take a moment and think as you're watching this, what evidence do you observe of the teacher supporting the development of expert learners? And what evidence do you observe of learners engaging in expert learning? So again, feel free to share in the chat as you're watching this, jot this down. We're gonna have a little Q&A at the end if you'd like to share out, but I'm gonna get this started here. So I'm gonna hop around here on my screen. You're gonna see some things here, but don't worry, I'll be right back in. I just prefer to do my video a little differently. So go back to my screen share. If you don't hear sound, I sure hope you do, because it worked last time.
And Daniel, we had a question in the chat about sharing the slides. And so I just want to let everyone know that yes, these slides will be available on the CECL website.
Small, big. Which one should we make next? Small? Yes, the rolling pin.
There is so much involved in teaching, and I love coming into the classroom every day, not knowing what's going to happen actually.
Make a ball.
Make a ball. Squish it.
And also learning from the children. I take every day as an opportunity to learn from them as well as they're learning from us.
So now we have the big, small, big, small. You're making a pattern, Aggie.
And for them to be capable of learning.
What color are your eyes? Blue. Are these eyes blue?
I believe every child is capable of learning if they're offered the right opportunities.
Take a look. You want to try make it bigger? Yeah, okay. Let's try to make it bigger.
We make sure we provide learning opportunities where we have goals in place.
Tell Desiree, what's your plan?
How many? Oh, this is Arena. What number did you get? 3. How many jokes are you gonna get?
We provide learning in a play-based environment. So everything, there's an intention behind it.
What picture are you gonna make? You're gonna make a rainbow. That is exciting.
We always have an art area set up for children to freely create art and Play-Doh, a lot of the hands-on experiences.
Teacher, I made hot chocolate.
Loud and quiet. Loud and quiet. Louder, louder.
And for our gathering or circle time, we always make sure it's pretty short, because children at this age, their attention span is not very long, and always include some kind of a movement and music. And a lot of repetition, because they are only 3 and 4, so we want to make sure we keep them engaged. We design everything in our classroom with children in mind.
How many legs does everybody on your planet have?
2.
And how about your body? Is your body a rectangle like mine?
No, my body has a square.
Everything is designed to be mind-provoking, and we're very flexible as well. I think that's kind of a number one thing we have to be as teachers, especially at this age.
Boys and girls, I got a book for you. I'm gonna put on my special glasses today. Ooh. Everything looks blue today.
Today I had, even during our gathering time, I had like 5 backup plans just in case things don't go the right way, because you never know what you're gonna get. Some days they're into it, some days they want to dance, and then we have a dance party.
Yay! Knuckles. Okay, 4 more to go.
We always want to make sure we kind of consider all children individually.
You had 6 and you take 1 away, how many?
So today, I know we have in our classroom, we have like a little pizzeria set up. So I saw a lot of children were really interested in that area, but it is pretty new. So there was a lot of conflict going on.
No, not that. That's not for you, don't do.
Yeah, you have this one. Which one are you going to use, Rosie?
But I see that the children are using their words, which we've been teaching them. And I was looking at some of them, listening to them, using the language that we always provide them with.
Teacher, I did that first.
You got that first. So what could you tell Augie?
Use your words instead. If you're upset, use your words. Go back and look at our expectations. Be safe, be kind, be respectful.
Look at this, Augie. Look what she found for you. What could you tell her? Sometimes friends say thank you if they find things for you. That's so nice.
And when I hear children using that kind of a language in our classroom, that's what I really know, okay, we're doing our job. We're teaching them, giving them the tools.
Make my goggles. I see orange and blue.
I think we're always trying to obviously do better and come up with new stuff, and this environment is ever changing. If children are not interested in an area, we always redesign it and put out new materials.
You want to build something else?
Everyone's gonna get a turn. We never forget anyone, right? Don't do.
I think like relationships is the base on all of this, and like you mentioned, a trust. Having relationship with the children,
We're gonna do it together. Okay.
with the parents and families, and also with the coworkers. It's, I think, very crucial to running a successful program, because it is all about just being loving each other as a human beings and being kind to each other. And once the children do develop that trust, then you can just see the learning just kind of takes off.
Look at you. And what do you have here? You have some freckles.
I believe it helps us with trying to remove the barriers in our classroom.
Which one is this one?
The excavator. You put the bigger sand.
Oh, they dig?
Making it more adaptable to all children, all learners.
How many shells have you found already?
We're just trying to serve and provide for all children that come to our classroom.
Thank you all so much. I hope that you enjoyed that video. I'll have one more for you here very shortly, but just really thinking about that classroom and thinking about what you saw, what was going on. So again, thank you, Sylvia, for putting that into the chat for me. But really think about that, right? What evidence do you observe of the teacher supporting the development of expert learners, and what evidence do you observe of the learners engaging in expert learners? So as we're moving through here, if you could just drop that into the chat, what you saw, what you observed, what you really thought. That is an amazing classroom. That is one of our state preschool classrooms here in Placer County. They're very fortunate they're on a college campus, so those children have access to an amazing wealth of information, modalities, media, just all kinds of things that they have. They are an inclusive site, so we are working with our special day infant toddler program to start to bring children as they age out of there into this classroom. So there's a lot going on, right? And hence the importance of UDL in that classroom to create that viable space. I see lots of things in the chat, right? Teachers modeling language, student engagement, right? Asking authentic questions, child-led. That's huge, right? That's a huge part of early childhood education, right? Understanding that classroom belongs to those children. One of the things I always invite my teachers in my classroom to remember is that the classroom is not ours, right? The classroom belongs to the children. We never wanted to hear the teacher say, my classroom, or what are you guys doing to my classroom? Or you have to, you need to, you're going to. No, right? Those are words you did not hear in the classroom, right? We're trying to engage children to bring out their learning, their understanding. Now, obviously, if someone's gonna leap off the side of a play structure or something, I'm probably gonna be screaming no as I'm running, right? But definitely not in all other contexts, right? I want children to have that lead. I want want them to understand that they're the leaders, right? And as I'm slowly removing those barriers, I'm working in the background, right? It's that ability to understand where they're at. We're kind of just there in the background. We're like the stage hands of a giant theater production, right? So we're allowing that to happen. So moving on. Yes, great questions. And I see there's lots of folks here from all over. So I saw some Arizona folks as well, Forks Up, ASU. So let's move on. Gotta throw that in.
Really quick, Danielle, there's a question about supporting learners who may be multilingual learners or learners who are nonverbal, and what might be some strategies that a teacher could use to support that language development and comprehension.
So I'm going to share some things here, some images and things like that, but it's inviting children, right? It's understanding. It's really being that support of a language, whether they're dual language learners, another language, whether they're nonverbal, it's having staff, right? It's having that capacity. In that instance, we like to look at the barrier, right? The barrier isn't that we don't have anybody in the classroom that speaks, Spanish or Japanese or what have you, or we don't have anybody in the classroom where this child is going that has experience working with children with speech delays or who are nonverbal. So what do we do, right? How do we build that capacity? We need to understand that that barrier exists in us, and how do we grow that? In Placer County, in our classrooms, preschool classrooms, we have 19 different languages spoken by children and their families. That's huge, right? 19 different languages. We are fortunate enough that in our staff, 14 of those languages are spoken, right? So we've built that capacity. We've gone through and said, we know, right? We're missing this, right? What do we need to do to change this? We need to do something, right? Because we need to ensure that these children are getting the access that we need. So I hope that answers your question. It's a lot of work, right? And it takes funding. It takes some things that are sometimes out of our control, but in our control, we can have supports and things like that. And I'll share that with you here shortly. So how do we design to develop expert learners, right? What do we do? How do we reach past that? So that's what I'm going to share here. One more video here for you all. Let's see here. I'll bring this one up and we will watch part 2 here. Again, if anybody has any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. This video is loading up. Always technology, right? So,
What else would you like on your pizza?
I like mushrooms.
Mushrooms? 2 mushrooms?
In the early childhood education environment, we're doing our best to be inclusive. UDL has really tied that all together.
You're making a picture of yourself. Yeah, how many eyes do you have?
I have one more.
One of the key words that we talk about all the time, intentionality. Everything's kind of designed ahead of time. Like, you don't see it, right? It looks like children are just able to play and move around, but when you look around, you'll start to see the little things, right? You'll start to see the units for measuring. You'll start to see numbers. You'll start to see language.
All together, let's see how many all together you have.
Have a plan. Think about your castle.
The block area is a great example of that, because the block area also extends learning.
Yeah, what's gonna happen?
How do you build higher? How do you build shorter? What happens if you build too high? Cause and effect.
Oh no. Let's try something different, okay?
These are all things that children utilize later to solve problems.
In the air?
The step-by-step instructions that they're doing during gathering, or even their day, right? They know what comes next, what comes after. That's algebra. Algebra, you follow a sequence, right? You do something first before you do what's next, before you do what's after, to get to that solution and that answer. So that's really what's happening in here. That's that intentionality that's built in.
Do you like cheese too?
And whether they remember that it came from preschool or not, it's in their brains, and you've created those connections down to that scientific level of building those synapses and getting their brain to function. What shape is this pizza?
square.
A square. Have you ever had a square pizza before?
Yeah.
Yeah. What UDL does really, it creates this expert learner who's aware of their emotions and their environment and that problem solving ability. Uh-oh. Well, how do you think we can get it out of there? Do you think this could get wet though? You got it. And what that does is it kind of reduces those barriers for them, right? So that they don't have to think about how they can solve problems, conflict, or solutions later on. Those barriers have been removed so they can be more engaged in their learning and they can be more focused on their learning.
Yay. Rub them together gently. Rub them together.
I think the preschool classroom is the ideal model for Cecil and UDL. It's everything that we talk about from the ground up. It's like allowing the children to be the leader. Which way do you want to go on the book? We were turning the pages this way. It'd be really great to see that extend beyond preschool. Those interactions, we are play-based, and I think that lends to UDL so well because we're looking for children to be expressive. We're looking for them to share their ideas.
I need the animals in there.
You need animals in there? Let's put them back in.
And then that allows us to build on it and grow them even deeper as learners, become expert learners and become lifelong learners as well.
What color eyes do I have?
Brown.
Brown.
So that's what I would do. I think I would take everybody who's involved in Cecil and UDL and just bring them into the preschool classroom, spend the week, see how it happens, see it actually in action, and then take it, right? Take it to K through 12 and expand it.
So I just want to say real quick, that classroom looks like that all the time. That wasn't set up special for anything. It wasn't set up special for a video. I took folks there the other day. It looks like that, right? She's always changing things. She's always making sure that it's accessible for children. It always looks like that. So consider how the learning environment and students' experience were designed in that video, right, to support expert learners. So feel free to add what you saw into the chat, all those things. In our preschool classrooms, we're really doing that, right? We're allowing children that access point to engage on their own, to facilitate these things, right? We don't necessarily always teach them about the things that are in there. We let them come to those conclusions ourselves. Every time I don't let a child answer, I give them an answer, I really am robbing them of that ability, right? Robbing them of that ability to learn, retain that information, to utilize those skill sets as they go forward. And think about it. How amazing would it be, to bring that through the grades? If you're new to UDL and you haven't seen what that looks like in secondary yet, or high school, things like that, elementary school, you haven't seen what that looks like yet, it's amazing, right? Think about those multiple modes of modality that we do for children, right? To allow them to show their content knowledge, to really give them those opportunities to have those, right? It really is that ability to show them. They have the content, they have the skills, right? So how do we bring it out? So how do we do that, right? How do we move forward? So some of the things we do are creating supports in our classrooms, right? If we're looking to facilitate engagement, if we're looking to ensure that, they are those children that are excited to explore and learn, how do we do that, right? We work within the zones of regulation, visual schedules, PECs, center sign-ins, right? These are some of the things, Sylvia, you were asking, and someone else had asked about what do we do to support multilingual learners or learners who don't maybe utilize language still. One of the things that, I don't often like to hear in the preschool classroom is they'll say, well, use your words. Well, what if you don't have words? How am I supposed to use those, right? I don't have any. So these things, right? Visual expectations, filling charts, utilizing these things in the classroom so that children have those abilities. These are modalities for them. These are modalities for their communication. You also become a modality for communication for children as a teacher, as an administrator, however you are in that classroom. They come to you, right? They seek out those ideas. They seek out that information and validation. These tools are great for them. How about representation, right? How do we create resourceful and knowledgeable learners with this, right? That can connect with their learning, right? That can remember what they already know. Visual anchor charts, manipulatives, thematic centers, making those connections with them. You'll see over here on the right, my friend Juan, right? He has those shapes. One of my favorite things to do in the preschool classroom was to hide shapes. I tell the children, I'm going to hide some shapes, right? I'm going to hide some shapes. And when you find this shape, what do you think is going to happen? And they all knew, right? Because I'm a talker. You're going to ask us questions, Teacher Daniel. Exactly. I'm going to hide these shapes. And if you find the shape, I am going to ask you a question about it. So think about that shape. I might ask you all kinds of things, right? I might ask you to tell me about it, where you found it. I've never seen that shape before. Can you tell me what it looks like, right? Those kind of things. So really engaging them. You know, we all do kind of the pumpkin hammering in, you see that. But where do we go beyond that, right? What if we dissect it? What if we create this center where they can kind of explore and tie in literature and see what that looks like? Things like utilizing those tools, right? Letters. These are just my writing centers, right? I'm not asking children to write these letters. I'm not having them sit down and do workbooks, even when signing their name, right? You know, see his name at the top and see how he's progressing. Same thing with the table. I just happen to have letters out so they can see. Children know what letters are as we're learning about them and understanding, but where are they in their own individual capabilities? How do I do that so that they don't feel like these expectations on them are beyond their means or beyond their capabilities? I want them to have that understanding and that ability. Think about those connections that you can create, right? The little kangaroo doll and the little thing. I didn't have those together, right? The kangaroo doll was in the dramatic play area. You just happened to find it, bring it over, tell me about it. Look, I found the picture, it matches. We talked about the letters. What animal is this? All these things start to come together as we create expert learners, right? They utilize that. He saw that kangaroo card when he was playing with that kangaroo in the dramatic play area. Same thing with name, right? I'm not asking children to write their name necessarily exactly like that, right? I'm just inviting them to write their name, right? I ask parents not to grab their hands. They're just there. They're doing their thing. So how do we continue? Oh yeah, this is great, right? Science. Our science centers can be so rich. Children love science. This is from one of our state preschools, and just his science center is insane, right? Creating all these connections for children. What you can kind of see and not see are tortoises, snakes, there are frogs in there, there's fish. What else is over there? Oh my goodness, there's bugs, there's tarantulas, there's mealworms. All that stuff is existing in here, right? It's those connections. It's that ability for children to engage. Look at the plants, right? Children are caring for these things. They're caring for these animals. One of the great experiences we had in this classroom is we brought in the little praying mantis eggs. We brought in like maybe 10 or 12 praying mantis little egg sacs. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but there's a few hundred in each one of us. So we come in the morning and there are there are praying mantises everywhere. Little tiny baby praying mantises, which are seriously like the cutest thing ever. Did we freak out? Did we go wild? Did the children lose it? No, they started collecting. They started sorting. These ones are the babies. They need to be here. We need to take care of them. Oh, get the magnifying glasses. We know we had these. Where are the, what did they ask me for? The little cages that we had when we went bug exploring. Where are the little cages we had, right? All these things that they knew that they were aware of, right? It really is, right? It really is that there for them. They knew, right? They knew how to do this. Just providing those opportunities, having those engagements, conversations with them. What about strategic and goal-oriented learners, right? Making their own plan for learning something new, right? How do we do this? Juan and Roberto here, they were building this tower, right? They're working together side by side. They decided, we want to build taller, Teacher Daniel. Okay, well, that's your plan. So what's your plan? Well, we need more blocks. Okay, that's perfect. But we want to stand on the chair. So what do? I'm thinking, okay, licensing came 2 weeks ago, so they're not going to come again. Let's talk about this. Is it safe to stand on the chair? Well, it can be. How many of you out there know to turn the chair around so that the back is facing the front when you're standing on it? Right? The children didn't know that either, right? So talking about those, having that interaction with them, allowing them to be safe. I'm right there with them. They're building. This is their plan. What about here, right? This literacy activity, my favorite book, Abby Yo-Yo from Reading Rainbow. What does it look like these children are doing on the left-hand side? They're having a meeting, right? They're having a meeting. They're discussing what to do next. This was their idea. We read Abby Yo-Yo. They loved Abby Yo-Yo. Read it all the time, Teacher Daniel. Okay, let's read Abby Yo-Yo. You know, let's make an Abby Yo-Yo. How can we make an Abby Yo-Yo? We need boxes. My mom gets big boxes from Amazon all the time. Let's use those. Okay, let's ask your mom. How do you guys want to do it? Let's paint them, right? Okay, let's put this together. Is there room in? There's no room in the classroom to build this, right? They knew that. They knew. They had those conversations. Let's go outside. Bring the pictures, Teacher Daniel. Bring the tape, and we're going to need scissors, right? They're coming to me telling me all these things. They're designing this, right? They're putting this together. I'm standing there taking pictures. I'm answering questions. Nakai in the red there, he was kind of turned into the supervisor, right? We need pieces of tape this long. We need shorter ones. We need big ones, right? Now we're integrating math, right? Now we're integrating all these things all through these ideas of how do we create this through UDL. Again, there's their planning, right? Their configuration. My favorite is this picture on the right-hand side using these coding things. If you pay really close attention, right? The idea is that you move these penguins using the arrows. There's one penguin without any arrow on his tummy. You move him across so that he can either get to a spot or find his egg. But we talked about directionality, right? We talked about these arrows and what this might look like. Trevor here knew that he needed to get one more arrow going to this side, right? Because we're not really left and right yet in preschool. And if you can see just above his hand, what did he do to that penguin? He flipped it upside down. He flipped it upside down, right? He knew that that arrow needed to go that way, and they weren't the way that he was going. He had used a bunch of them. He flipped it upside down. So really giving children this advantage, their knowledge, having those conversations, allowing them to feel comfortable is such an important part. So I'm thinking about all this, you know, really reflecting on developing young expert learners. How might you build on what you already do to support the development of young learners, right? Using these guidelines. What would you like to try out to support the development of young learners, right? There's so much information. We have so many resources, especially in early childhood education. We're afforded this ability to be playful, to be interactive, to really dive deep in with children and bring out the best of their abilities. So thinking about that, I invite you to share in the chat if you just want to keep notes for yourself as well. But how might you build on that, right? What do you want to try out? Every time I do this presentation, I think, oh, I should have done that. Or maybe I should try this next time. You know, these different things that we have as we kind of go through. So the next resource I'd like to share with you, and I'm not sure if someone can get this in the chat for me or I can do it. Let me see. I think I pulled it up here. Let's see here. Oh yeah, here it is.
You got it? I'm happy to drop it.
Oh yeah, please go for it. Thank you.
Got you.
So this next resource is created by the who did this one for us? Oh, yes, it was Shasta County Office of Education and the San Joaquin County Office of Education. And it really breaks down the guidelines. So it actually does all of them as you go in there, looking at principles of engagement, looking at all these different abilities, and it kind of breaks them down. Principles of representation are in there as well. You'll see all kind of 3 buckets that we kind of discuss, and it shows you what it looks like normally in the guidelines, but then it also has an option for early childhood education, what that looks like. So it's a crosswalk to kind of show you what it looks like at the top. And then into early childhood education. And then it makes connections to the DRDPs if you're using those, as well as frameworks and foundations. Now, the frameworks and foundations it's going to tie to are California, but you know, you looking at state standards, for example, I went to Arizona State, right? My state standards that I learned were Arizona, but they're very similar to California state standards because we're all utilizing developmentally appropriate practice when we're working with children. So I invite invite you to take a look at this resource. It's wonderful. I'm super grateful that they created this, and that we have the ability to kind of go through and utilize this and look through it. I've made adaptations for myself as well, where I'm able to kind of go through and make adjustments, right? Because we know in California we're going to lose some of these assessments here and start doing some different things. But really, this is a great tool to utilize. So moving along, we do have a feedback survey. So let me see here. Do we want to go ahead and do this now? You can start doing this, I guess. And if you have any questions or comments for me, please go ahead and drop it in the chat. I'm not sure if you can come off mute, but you can. But just go ahead because we have a little time for some questions, about 5 minutes.
Daniel, thank you so much for all of the great examples and resources and tools for further exploration. There were a couple of participants with raised hands, and I don't know either if folks can unmute themselves, but I love this invitation to drop any questions in the chat if things are bubbling up, or other connections that you're making, or practices that you engage in yourself that you like, oh, I didn't realize this was connected to the guidelines, but actually it is. I've been doing UDL this whole time. We'd love to hear those. So feel free to drop them in the chat.
Please do. And also put my email in there. I'm a resource for all early childhood educators across the globe. Whatever you need, I'm always here. Like, feel free to reach out if you have a question, a comment, you're just wondering, you saw an activity, how did you do that? Where did that come from? Like, please just this is what I do. This is what I love. So please feel free to reach out to me. I'm definitely more than happy to share more, increase the capacity. Like I said, I was one of those children in Head Start. I was a preschooler, and really looking for that for the children as well. We have some other resources as well, Cecil statewide resources that you can access. Someone's asking for another webinar here, school-wide program systems. Sylvia, I think you got that.
Yeah, we do, but feel free to include any of this feedback or suggestions in the survey. That way we can get it documented and keep it on our radar.
Please do. We also have our California educators. We have lots of opportunities here through the CCIL grant. This is Sharon Coyle. She's our director here. Feel free to reach out with her if you're in the area and interested in some more information as well. It's definitely will help you. We are always happy to bring on new districts and work through some UDL and create more capacity for children. And of course, we have our CAS newsletter, which you all want to sign up for if you haven't already. That's the last little bit of information here for you. Again, I thank you all so much for having me. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you got some information, and I appreciate you spending time